Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first live stream of the Bourbon Basement. My name is Ryan,
I'm Steve.
and we are going to be doing some Kentucky bourbon tastings on this channel. Hopefully, you all will go on to enjoy that.
Some reviews and some tastings. Share our love of bourbon with everybody that's out there that wants to know something about bourbon, maybe new to bourbon or maybe experienced in bourbon drinking and may just want drinking buddy. We're here.
We are specifying this particular channel to Kentucky only bourbons.
Kentucky only bourbons, but don't think that limits our selection in any way because 95% of bourbons are made here in Kentucky. Every state in America makes bourbon, but Kentucky makes 95% of those. So don't think it limits us at all.
And
we got plenty.
I will go ahead and apologize in advance. We're still getting everything kind of figured out here. I am going to have to lean over here to the computer from time to time to actually see chats and everything because we don't have a way to read them other than me having the actual streams pulled up live. So I do apologize if you see me kind of go out of frame over here and be messing with this. But
we'll try to get as many questions as you all have. If there's anything you want to know about a bourbon that we're trying, about tastings, any bourbons that we've tried, anything back here on the shelf that you can always ask. We see the questions. We'll try to answer every question as it comes up.
Yes.
But I went to Ryan one day and I asked him, I said, can we get we both love bourbon, right? So I said, hey man, let's do a podcast or something about this. And it's really my way of getting him over to my house once a week so we can spend some time together.
No. We're going to be live twice this week.
This week.
Yeah.
Twice didn't work out last week. So
it's been a long and ongoing issue. We tried to do it where we were going to post videos, but then eventually get into the live streams, but that didn't end up working out. So we just said, you know what, let's jump right in raw to the live streams and just wing it. Yeah. So here we are.
Here we are live, and it's going to be a mess. I can already tell you.
It's going to be
I've never done anything live, so.
I've never done anything like this live, especially not the way that we have it set up currently. But I think it's going to work for the time being until we can figure something
Maybe
else
our
out.
studio will get a little bit better. The basement studio.
Soundproofing and everything.
Anyway, where was we going next? What was our...
I don't know. Well, I think we should just go ahead and introduce
what we're going to be doing today.
And
all right, so I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off, but what we're going to do today is we're going to review some makers. And what I'm going to try to do
in every episode
is give a little bit of history about Maker's Mark and just a little bit of background. I'm not going to try to bore anybody with a bunch of history, but it's interesting to me. I read a lot of books about bourbon. We do a lot of bourbon tours.
I know you and Mother have toured quite a few. I've only got to tour a couple,
but
like Woodford, a good handful.
Yeah,
Woodford and Buffalo Trace and Evan Williams. I think those.
Yeah.
Are the only ones, and Four Roses.
I've
got to tour 4 of them.
Yeah, so but we do quite a bit of those. I've picked up a lot of tips for tasting bourbon over the years,
which will extend to you all.
But as far as drinking bourbon neat and getting into it, like just really trying to sample it and really trying to pull out the flavors, it's only been a couple of years, and since I've been doing that, I've been wanting to taste every Kentucky bourbon there is.
Them to see
I want to compare it to see how much a $35 bottle tastes like to a $1,000 bottle that I may never have, but still, I've got a couple.
You say $35, $40 a bottle?
Probably $35, yeah, anywhere between $35 and $40. Maker's Mark, I think everybody knows Maker's Mark. It's very identifiable with the wax and the square bottle.
Trademarked.
It's very, very, everybody knows this one. This is the name, and this is kind of the one that got me started on bourbon in general. I didn't drink it neat, but when I was your age, I'd always go into the bar and I wanted a Makers and Coke. I always asked for Makers and Coke.
That's almost the cardinal sin. This is almost too mid-shelf to be mixing with Cokes.
But Makers and Coke, Makers was a big name. I knew it, and I felt cool just going in and saying, hey, man, yeah, give me Makers and Coke. So that's how I started. So Makers was my bourbon that I mixed with Coke. We still got it on the rack back here, and sometimes I still mix it with Coke.
Shame on you.
I know. I don't mix much. Most of my bourbons are neat. Some of them, the higher proofs, I put on the rocks. But today, it's Makers. A little bit of history about Makers. Uh, you got Bill Samuels. He bought this. He started Maker's Mark Company in 1953. First bottle produced in 1959. But a lot of interesting history goes into that. So Samuels had all these recipes for bourbon, and he wanted to get into bourbon, and he wanted to start making bourbon back in the 50s, right? So he has good friends that's already in bourbon. One is Julian Van Winkle, who owned the Stitzel Weller Distillery right down the road from him, and they produced the W.L. Weller and O. Fitzgerald, which was a no rye bourbons. They were wheat. And anyway, he had some friends in it, and Julian Van Winkle, gave him a recipe. Now, it wasn't the only recipe that Bill Samuels had. He had 7 of them. Now, Bill didn't want to make and age and distill 7 different bourbons for 6 years before he could try them to see which one he wanted to make. So, interesting fact about Bill is he put his recipes with his yeast in a loaf of bread. Now, one thing about the recipes, that's the mash bill. Everybody will tell you what's in their mash bill, just about. The secret to most bourbons and what they hold under lock and key and penalty of death if anybody gets it is the yeast. They never want that yeast strain.
Penalty of death.
Well, back in the old days, we went to some of those tours where they said that the person that had the bourbon kept his yeast under his mattress because he didn't want nobody to get it because the yeast is what's very, very important in bourbon. Everybody will tell you what's in their mash bill, just like this one's 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley. So everybody will tell you that. Just about every bourbon that you go to will tell you what their corn percentage and all that stuff is. But they won't tell you nothing about their yeast. So anyway, he had 7 loaves of bread. He put his yeast in all these different recipes. And the one he liked the best was the one that Julian Van Winkle gave him with the no rye. And so that's the one that he started going with. And when he went with it, do you know who Julian Van Winkle is?
I don't.
Do you know any of the Van Winkles? What do you know about Van Winkle?
Yeah, I know something about Van Winkle.
Okay.
But
so what do you know about Van Winkle?
I know that the very high quality bourbon nowadays is very sought after. I know about the Van Winkle.
Sought after, hard to find, can't really buy unless you pay thousands and thousands of dollars for it.
That's kind of the bottles we were referring to that we may never have back here on the shelf.
So there's 25, 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle and a 10-year-old Pappy Van Winkle. Well, Julian Van Winkle is Pappy Van Winkle.
Yeah.
So Julian Van Winkle, this is the recipe he got for this Maker's Mark, which when I read this history, it makes these bourbons seem more prestigious and more, I don't know, just makes them sound like they should be awesome bourbons, all right? Well, this one here, when it came out in 1959, it was marketed as it tastes expensive, and it is. And it was one of the highest bourbons on the market at the time. So more of the most expensive bourbons that you could buy back in 1959 in the early 60s. I don't know when it became the lower, but it's another thing.
It's mid-shelf. Maybe not price range, but quality-wise, I would call it mid-shelf.
It's always been the same thing since 1959 when they released, till 2010 anyway. Maker's Mark made nothing but this bourbon right here, Maker's Mark. Now, they may have changed the bottles, but they changed nothing inside the bottles.
Right.
And the only reason they changed the bottles was like, we're here. We live in Bourbon County, Kentucky. Another reason for the podcast. But the Kentucky Wildcats, they put some blue wax on there, make some special bottles.
Special editions.
So special bottles like that, but it's always the same stuff on the inside. But back in 2010, they released Maker's 46. So that was the second thing to Makers that they ever released.
Right.
Now they got the 101, the
right behind
cast strength, the wood finished. They have several different kinds of Maker's Mark, but they're the only distillery that just makes one bourbon. So Maker's Mark, when you go see that, yeah. So other distilleries, just Buffalo Trace, for example, they make several different bourbons.
Different ones, but they only make one.
Maker's Mark makes Maker's Mark. They don't. A lot of distilleries will make bourbons for other states, they distill them and age them and then send them to the other states. Or some of them just distill them and barrel them and send them to other states. But Maker's Mark only makes Maker's Mark.
Now, before you continue, you said something about some distilleries here will take bourbons and send them to other states.
Yes.
What that cannot no longer be qualified as a Kentucky bourbon anymore, correct?
It depends. So we all know what bourbon is. It's got to be 51% corn. It's got to be stored in a brand new
charred oak barrel.
Yes, and you got some other rules that go along with it. It can't have any additives other than some water for proofing, stuff like that. There's like 4 major rules to bourbon. Well, the only thing that's different that makes a Kentucky bourbon, it follows the same strict rules as bourbon has to be made in America. So it can be made in any of the 50 states of America to be bourbon.
But to be
a Kentucky bourbon, it has to be distilled and aged in Kentucky.
And bottled.
Nope, just distilled and aged. Just distilled and aged. So if they distill a barrel of whiskey or bourbon,
and then age it here,
they age it for
Kentucky.
4 years here, and then they ship it to California. California can put that is a Kentucky bourbon on their bottle, as long as it's distilled and aged. It doesn't have to be bottled. So that's a couple of things. So anyway, old Bill, he was a family guy, and he got into his family business, and he wasn't the only one responsible for Maker's Mark. You had Marjorie, his wife. Marjorie actually designed the label for the bottle. She actually hand drew it, from what I understand, back in the 50s. She drew that label, and then they mass produced it. And as far as I can tell, doing all my research on Google and everything else, Maker's Mark, same label from the 50s that it is right now for this bottle. She also, it's rumored that she come up with the square bottle. That's not a proven fact, but she did come up with the wax dip, which is kind of an ionic thing for Maker's Mark. So Marjorie was all that. Oh, and she came up with the name. So she named it.
Big part of it.
That's right. So a lot of unique stuff with Maker's Mark, and I am rattling along. I said there wouldn't be much history before we get into the tasting, but it's got an interesting history because they do a lot of unique things that no other distillery does, or very few do. Very few distilleries, I'll have to say. So we'll start with the mash bill. I told y'all it was 70% corn and 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley. With that, the wheat that's used in it is a red winter wheat, and they say it brings out it's softer.
Tongue twister.
Red
winter wheat.
So that's that. When they're fermenting their bourbon, they also we talked about this not that long ago with Woodford having the cypress fermentation tanks. They use cypress fermentation tanks, and most of the tours and stuff that we go on now, they're all stainless steel. So that's something that the Maker's Mark still does. Woodford Reserve still does it. One of our favorite bourbons, by the way.
That's another episode.
That was one that we tried to post and failed.
It was going to be a good one too. So you all have something to look forward to.
It was. That was our first episode, wasn't it? And it was going to get posted.
You'll have something to look forward to anyway.
So another they paint their let's see, where was I going?
You just finished with the cypress tanks.
They have the fermentation of the cypress tanks. Then they go to the barrels, and let's go to the barrels. So their barrels are made with 32 staves instead of the normal 34. I don't know what it does, but that's a special made barrel. Every stave in it's a 1/4 inch bigger than other barrels. And
specifically for them?
Do you know why?
No, I don't.
I don't know either. From the research I did, they said it just makes it taste better.
The logical thing that I could think was when it's aging, maybe it loses less out of the barrel
because it has less openings.
Yeah,
that's
the only thing that I could think.
That's a good idea. You know what? Have you ever heard related to bourbon a bunghole? You know what the bunghole is related to bourbon?
No.
You don't know what the bunghole is?
Is it the one that the cork goes in?
Yeah, but what's the cork? What is that cork called?
I guess a bunghole.
A bung. The cork
bung.
is the bung, and the hole is the hole in the barrel. So the bung hole's in the side of the barrel, guys. And I know it sounds funny, but it is a bung hole. It's in the side of the barrel. That's where they fill their bourbon and they dump their bourbon. But the bung hole that most bourbon companies use is a poplar wood bung. A poplar wood bung.
I promise we're talking about bourbon, folks.
Yeah, but Maker's Mark, it uses a hard walnut bung to put in the bung hole.
I wonder what.
From the reason, I thought, does this change the flavor? I mean, because it has to be an oak barrel.
They've been producing this for so long. I don't think that we should question them on anything.
I don't. But all the research I've done and all the people I've talked to, the only thing I could figure out is they said it's easier to remove than the poplar. But I've watched them. Have you seen them? Have you seen them remove those things?
Yeah.
It's just a big drill and bust it right out of there. So I don't know. So we don't know about
whatever
that.
They want their process to be,
Well, and then they take that barrel to the painted black rick houses. And something else that's unique with Maker's Mark that most bourbon companies have gone away from is that every barrel in that warehouse, they rotate. They rotate every barrel in the warehouse. So they take barrels on top and move them to the bottom, barrels on the bottom, move them to the middle, and then they move the middle up to the top. And they do
all done by hand, I think.
Hand rotate every barrel. And you know why they do that? Just so every barrel can experience the different temperatures.
The humidities and coolers.
So most of your other distilleries, they don't do that. But your ones on the top, they get more of that heat. So they get more of the expansion and contraction, more of the bourbon soaking up into the wood and then coming out of the wood when it gets cold.
Especially here in Kentucky, because we had summer all the way up until this past week, and now it's finally getting cooler and feeling like fall.
Cool. But they do that so it gets all the temperatures. Most bourbon companies won't. They'll just take, when we mix ours, we'll just take a couple barrels from the top, couple barrels from the middle, couple barrels from the bottom, and they blend them like that. Well, Maker's does not. Maker's rotates all their barrels. But guess how many barrels they have to rotate? They do this every quarter. Every 3 months, they're rotating these barrels.
Thousands, probably.
Yes. Just take one wild guess. How many barrels is stored at Maker's Mark facility?
I bet is it northern or southern of 50,000?
Northern.
Northern?
Yes.
Like how much northern?
Like 950,000 barrels.
Every 3 months?
Every 3 months by hand. So it makes you appreciate this $35 a bourbon a little bit more. So when you drink it,
it's a lot of labor that goes into that.
It's a lot of labor. It's a lot of time. So then when they make the bourbon, they'll take it and they'll remove the walnut bung from the bung hole. They dump that down in there. They mix, from the research I've done and from the people I've talked to, they mix about 20 barrels. They blend about 20 barrels of bourbon to make their bottle. And then they start bottling. So they got about 20 barrels in there. They start bottling 20 barrels. And that's
so what we're saying is this bottle is a mixture of 20 different rotated barrels over the aging process.
Yeah. So on this particular bottle in all Makers, it's always 90 proof or 45% alcohol. All right. And back in 2013, they had a little bit of a thing that made the news there, a little bit of a ruckus over at Maker's Mark. Do you know what they tried to do?
No.
So this is from 59. They released their first bottle to 2013. Always been 90 proof. So they wanted to deproof it to 84 proof. And evidently, there's a very big following of Maker's Mark's fan. Maker's Mark
caused a row.
Yes.
No one would. It wouldn't really make that big of a difference.
So according to experts, it would have made no difference to the taste. I don't believe that, or everybody would do 84 proof instead of 90 because you get more bourbon out of it, right?
I would imagine the burn would be significantly less.
So anyway, made a big ruckus, the fans did. So they nixed it. They said, okay, we're not going 84 proof. We're going to leave it at 90 proof. But then 1 year later in 2014, they went total reverse and made their first cask strength straight from the barrel. So they went even.
I wonder why they waited so long.
Yeah. But the funny thing is I told you until 2010, they didn't make anything different. Well, then in 13, they're making cask strength.
Yeah.
So they're making all this stuff.
No, 14.
14 they're making cask strength. But the funny thing that Makers does that no one else does. So when they double distill the bourbon and they get the White Lightning or the, we would call it moonshine back in the day. I think it's illegal to say that now. But that White Lightning that comes out, it's clear, colorless before it goes in the barrel. That's what goes in the barrel. They are the only distillery. They deproof their White Lightning down to 110 proof or 55% alcohol. And that, according to everything I can find on the website, is the lowest percentage of this distillate that goes into any bourbon's barrel. So now the proof will rise in the barrels as that ages and stuff. But most places will put that. I think it can't be more than 160 proof going into the barrel. But most of them will barrel at close to 150, 160 anyway. So they have that high proof coming out. So then they can deproof that coming out of the barrel. Yeah, with their added. So history, that's about it that I can think of. You want to talk about the bottle? I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to need a drink of water.
I mean, what is there to really talk about other than the trademark wax dip that they always... I mean, have they done that since the very beginning of it? I don't remember if you said that or not.
That was Marjorie's idea. Remember, she come up with the wax.
So, I mean, they've done that since 1953?
At least 59. That's when they started bottling. And selling. Yeah. So
what's the average time that this is aged?
Okay, so that's a good question because when I looked that up and asked around,
just for, I mean, like you said, all the bourbon that goes into these bottles is basically the same.
A lot of bourbons will have an age statement. For example, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is Rebel. It's aged 10 years. So if that says an age statement on the bottle of 10 years, that means every barrel that goes into that bottle has to be a minimum of 10 years old. Now, this one here is a single barrel, so it's one barrel aged at least 10 years. But if you have an age statement on, like this one, Ezra aged 7 years, this one is not a single barrel, so every barrel that went in that is over 7 years.
And they could be anywhere from 7 years minimum up to however much they want to put in it.
That's right. I mean, I've talked to some distillers, and they're doing a 6-year-old bourbon, and they dump 12-year-old barrels in there.
So sometimes you just luck out. It's all luck of the draw and what bottle that you get when it comes to that.
But what they're looking for is that taste element. They want every bottle of this to taste the same.
Exactly the same.
They want it to taste at least other than, people like me can't tell the difference. Experts maybe, but not me. So
they're a different breed, though.
They try to take those things and they try to blend them. So what Makers says, they don't put age statement on the bottle. It is believed that every barrel is aged approximately 6 years.
6 years.
Some 7, but some 4. And what they make is their age statement. They say we age to taste. So they taste their barrels. If it's ready in 4 years, it'll go in the blend. If it ain't ready until 7 years, it'll go into the blend. But I didn't hear that they age many past 7.
Okay. So 7's about the max.
So no age statement, but 6 to 7 years.
But yeah. Coming from my personal drinking experience with this, because we have both had this on multiple occasions, just because it is such a trademark thing around here. I would even imagine this is big out of state. Like, I feel like most liquor stores you go into, you're gonna find a bottle of Makers.
I think so. I think that's probably all over the world.
Probably. This just been around for so long, and it's, like we said before, such an affordable thing for anyone to go in and buy and not have to break the bank and worry about it. I feel like you'd honestly find that anywhere that you go.
All right. Let's get into some bourbon.
Let's drink a little, right?
Enough about history, enough about us. Let's taste some bourbon.
And we're not actually going to get it out of this bottle, unfortunately. We actually have it staged over here on our left.
Let's tell them about a tasting. What do we want to do? You got all that info. Let's tell them about some tastings.
Well, you want to go with your first thing you're looking at is appearance, and that's why I think that we should get it in the glass first before we talk about appearance.
Let me get it some.
And actually, so they can see it. And I will bring my personal glass over there closer, so you can see more in detail what we're seeing up here.
It's an 1.5 ounce pour, so.
Yes, we've got an automatic dispenser over here.
We've got a very good tasting here, so.
It's going to be a tasting.
which is what we thoroughly enjoy. The 1.5 ounce pour.
All right, now I'll bring this over there to you all.
Yeah, so tell them about what we're wanting to do, why we use the glass.
Hopefully you can get a decent sense of what that is. It's a nice, it's like a caramel color compared
Can
to...
you see those whiskey tears on that? Because I can see them from here through that light.
You can a little bit. The camera's not quite wanting to focus in on the glass. It's still on your face.
So we'll tell them about the whiskey tears.
So the whiskey tears are one of my favorite parts of a tasting, just so you can see really how the thickness has developed, I guess. Like, of course, it's still a liquid, but there's like a film that's created on the outside of the glass that looks like teardrops falling down the side, and it's like one of my favorite things.
It is, and you don't really see it that much on $35 bottles of bourbon.
No, it's normally
usually
more the more expensive
associated with the higher class or a higher coating of bourbon, one that really coats the tongue.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that I consider in my first step of a tasting, as far as appearance goes, is color, obviously, and then I think the tears are a big part of appearance for me, just because I think they're so aesthetically pleasing.
We'll talk about the color. I just kind of see. I think it's a nice color. I'm usually one for a darker bourbon. I like a darker bourbon.
I was going to say this one is rather light compared to...
It's kind of like a amber.
A caramel. That's an amberish caramel, light caramel color. Like if you were to...
You know, when appearance to me is just, when they do a tasting, they do, okay, you do appearance, nose, taste, and finish. Well, the appearance to me, I like them all.
I'm not... I mean...
And the taste to me, I kind of like them all too. So the taste to me now is I'm trying to pull out those specific flavors.
Yeah. But after your appearance, what they tell you to go to next is you already went through them pretty quick, but we'll go through them as we go through the steps here. So we've got our appearance, and then they tell you your nose. So they tell you to rotate it around the glass like we've been doing and get the aromas released, and then open your mouth so you get the smell going through your nose over your tongue as you take it in, and then out through your... Is it out through your mouth?
Yes.
Out through your mouth as well. So in through your nose, out through your mouth, but you want to keep your mouth open so the air
gets that alcohol
flowing.
Burn in there, yeah, and it goes over and coats your tongue. And what kind of nose you got on this?
I will say that compared to most, this does have a harsher nose. It will... Some of them you can smell, and you're going to get that nose burn. But this one, it really kind of sits in here at the top of your nostrils.
Almost a rubbing alcohol.
Almost. But after you...
But you got to wade through that.
Yeah,
wade
your
through
first
the rubbing
nose
alcohol.
is going to be tough, but then you can actually go in again and...
I get some obvious bourbon notes. A lot of things that you get out of the... What?
I get some obvious bourbon notes. This is definitely bourbon.
I didn't want to... the specific that most bourbons have, the smells, the nose that you get out of a lot of bourbons just from the oak barrel. This one's not as oaky or smoky to me as some of the others, but I still get that corn, and I get vanilla.
See, I'm not getting so much vanilla, but I am getting a sweetness. I just can't put my finger on what exactly it is. But there is a very potent, it's almost a candy type sweetness to me. Like if I were to eat a sour gummy or a gummy bear.
Really? I might be getting some apple in there.
Maybe it's the apple mixed with the sweetness that I'm getting candy from.
But when you're doing a tasting, and this is what we picked up just from the tours and tastings that we've done, you're going to have a different nose than someone else. And it's going to be part of what you've experienced through the day. All that kind of stuff.
Anything that's been on your palate.
Yeah, if you've eaten and
if there's any taste on your tongue, as that comes down through your nose and over your tongue, it could sway the opinion even more.
And it definitely changes the taste.
100%.
You got to think about that too. So bourbons, you can research what bourbon pairs good with some meals, and it'll really help bring out a lot of the flavor profile. Some chocolates and stuff like that too brings out a flavor profile. Well, let's get into the taste of it.
That is the next step of the tasting process, is the taste. Before we get into that, though, I do want to say, guys, Must be 21 or older to drink. I don't want to get anyone in trouble out here. 21 or older to drink or even possess alcohol in your personal possession, and please drink responsibly. You got to put the disclaimer in.
Let's tell them. Let's tell them what they tell us on the tours about tasting, about the first one, second one, and then
Okay.
the third.
So the first one, you're supposed to take a sip, and it's supposed to be like you're doing mouthwash. You're supposed to move it around all over your taste buds of your tongue, and you're supposed to let it sit there for at least 5 seconds.
You don't have to.
No gargling or anything. Just swish it around, cover your tongue with it, let the burn.
Make sure you get the front and the back of your tongue.
Every part of your tongue.
And it's probably going to burn.
It's going to burn, but that's what they call the acclimation taste or something like that, getting your mouth prepared for the burn so you can get that out of the way, and then your next taste, you can actually start getting rid of the burn, but I'll explain a little more.
But you don't start judging it yet,
No, you don't start judging on the second one. So first taste, we're just getting the burn out, a little sip. All right, that was about 5 seconds. You're getting the burn, but after you go through the second taste, the burn will be
first impressions of the burn.
My nose burnt more than my tongue does.
So if you're new to bourbon and you do this, your nose burnt more. See, right on the tip of my tongue is where I got the burn. But if you're new to bourbon at all, experienced bourbon drinkers, you may be able to slam them back and not even have to get acclimated. I still have to get acclimated every time.
I don't, but I do for a tasting if I'm actually wanting to decipher exactly what's going on.
But if you're new, it's going to burn. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, how does anybody drink this stuff?
And it's not miserable or anything that. It's just unpleasant for some.
I take a lot of it like the Listerine mouthwash, if you've ever had it.
If you can do mouthwash, you can taste bourbon. That's all. I mean, it's as easy as that. It's very similar as far as
all right, what about the second taste?
So the second taste, it's another acclimating one. You're not judging the taste or anything on it yet. It's still just getting your mouth ready for actually being able to pull the flavors out of your third taste.
But you don't have to swish it as much. You can. And what's the difference?
There's like no burn at all on the second one.
I got just a tingle, and it's kind of on the sides of my tongue now. No burn on the front. That's where it was before. I don't have the alcohol in my nostril like it was hanging around there. So you can tell that you're coming down.
If you do your first taste correctly and cover your mouth like you're supposed to, your second taste, there should be like little to no feeling.
Look at those whiskey tears now, man. I like to see that.
It's such a pleasant sight.
So now the experts, this is when they start judging. Is on that third. When you read a review or something about a bourbon and they're telling you, oh, it tastes like this and this and this, and I taste butterflies and rainbows.
It's on the third taste. They've already done what we've done.
They're not judging it on the first two.
Yeah, they've already done what we've done.
Let's take it third.
All right, let's try to decipher some of this.
I hope I taste rainbows. All right, tell me about it. What you got?
Tastes pine.
Pine.
Like cedar.
Really?
It's not a bad thing.
No.
But that's like the first taste that hits you. And then
you get sweet. Are you sweet? Because I'm very sweet.
It's still sweet. I'm still getting that it's like a nutty candy. It's a sweet. It's not a mapley nut kind of thing. It's a sweet, candy-ish pie. It's not a bad thing.
I do taste corn. I get sweet taste.
It's like get a little more cheese here.
I taste black pepper.
I feel like that's just such a common thing that you taste with all bourbons, though.
You do, and there's going to be a lot of common taste, and a lot of that's going to be your palate.
And I guess I should be saying those things as well, just for the people that haven't tried bourbon before. But I've been so acclimated to that taste over all the bourbons that I've had.
That's what I wanted to explain too. So your palate, guys, everybody's palate's different.
No one's
And
going to have the same thing.
You're gonna taste something totally different than I taste. You may taste something totally different than experts. I recommend that you don't read reviews on what it's supposed to taste like.
It will sway your opinion, and you're going to
I
be
think it'll
trying
sway.
to taste something that you're not getting.
So get that taste, see what you taste, then read your reviews to see what they taste.
How it compares.
And then if you want to work on your palate and try to build your palate, I would go to an expert review, not a joker like me. Go to
we do our best.
Yeah, I mean we tell you what we think and what it is, but
no one's
go to
incorrect.
An expert, and if they say they taste apples, and you want to go in here and you want to say, I want to pull out that apple, I want to taste that apple, try to pull that apple out
after you've already deciphered what you pull from it.
But that's how you build your palate.
Yeah, I could pull vanilla, and he could pull beef jerky. It could be two total opposite things. But I'm going to go in for the fourth taste here and see if I can pull out anything other than a candy pine.
I get a pepper. I get a peppery corn, but I get a lot of sweet, but I can't. So it's totally different than my nose, right?
My nose was very sweet.
Totally different. I had the sweet in my nose, but this is totally different. I don't taste. Well, I did. I smelled corn a little bit.
Actually, I'm going to go on with some distiller's water on my fourth.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Explain to them what the distiller's water is.
And then, I'll go through a couple things I had here and I forgot. Okay, so guys, when you're doing a tasting, especially if you're tasting more than one bourbon, we're only tasting one tonight. But you need a palate cleanser.
So water. And you don't need it in your tasting.
Water is a good thing.
I'm doing that just because I want to pull out different flavors on this next one.
And you can take the water
100%.
Between. But water's a good palate cleanser. Unsalted crackers, like the little oyster crackers or something you put in soups. Is that unsalted?
You can get unsalted saltines.
Okay. Or oyster crackers. I didn't know. Why do they call them saltines if they're unsalted?
You can get unsalted saltines.
For your nose, we've got coffee, and it's just the coffee beans, and it clears your nose between your drinks. Of course, with one bourbon, you don't need it. But you can do it with one bourbon. Maybe you went in there and you got so much alcohol on that first smell, you can clear your nose and try it again.
Maybe we should have tried that. Because I even said something about my nose burning more than others.
I forgot about these. First episode.
Hey.
Forgot about these.
I got you.
But at these professional tastings that you do with these at these tours, they recommend distiller's water. It's just distilled water means it's boiled and it has zero taste. So it affects the flavor of this at all.
Now, one thing I will say as far as water goes, any water that you get in Kentucky, one reason why Kentucky is so big on bourbon, and I think we forgot to mention this, which was a kind of a big point that we wanted to make, but all the water you get in Kentucky, if it's not distiller's water or distilled water, which has been boiled and freed of all the stuff in it, we have limestone water here in Kentucky, and even our spring water, which is what we're drinking in these glasses, has bits of limestone in it. Am I correct?
The limestone filters all the impurities out of that water. So
yeah.
Your groundwater is filtered through that limestone. So if you have a spring water around here, it's all filtered through that limestone, which is that's what they make bourbon with.
It's supposed to be fantastic for bourbon.
Yeah, so, and now some of the bourbon companies, they will use the city water, and you know city water as well as I do. There's chemicals in city water. They filter those out with charcoal filters and limestone and everything else. So anyway, what we did there, we put a couple drops of distiller's water, no taste. If you like bourbon on rocks, if you like to have it on rocks, I recommend distiller's water because it won't change the taste of your bourbon.
And we do that as well.
Even limestone water here, you do have a different taste profile. Any kind of water, any kind of ice you put in it, it will change the taste. So distiller's water. You'd be surprised with a couple of drops of water in your bourbon, what it does.
How it changes the flavor.
How it changes it.
Now I'm getting licorice.
Funny you say that because I got licorice as well. I got the cherry kind of like the ropes.
The ropes ones?
Yes.
I don't know if it's more ropes or strawberry, but
Well,
I'm definitely
I
getting
actually
licorice.
like strawberry Twizzlers.
Like the aftertaste that
And
you get after eating licorice, that's what I feel on my tongue
I
right
don't
now.
like the cherry rope licorice.
I like the ropes just because of the ropes.
And that's what I'm getting right now.
He's a die-hard strawberry OG Twizzlers guy.
I love cherries.
Not a sponsor.
I love cherries, and I'm going to tell y'all a secret about me. So I've been drinking bourbon neat for 2 years now, trying to taste a bunch of different bourbons, trying to compare a bunch of different bourbons, trying to build and develop my palate. And a lot of the descriptions about bourbon is cherry, 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 cherry. And I tend to buy all those bourbons that say, hey, I taste the cherry note. And I buy those, and I yet to taste cherry.
But
like
you taste
real
cherry in this one.
I taste fake cherry.
Well,
it's almost like a fake cherry.
I got licorice
artificial.
in my fourth, and then I got a little bit of sip out of the bottom, and I tasted like a Thin Mint.
Minty.
Which it could have been the slight burn, but I got mintiness.
Well, what do you think overall for $35 bourbon?
I think that for $35, I don't think that is a horrible choice at all.
I don't think so either. What are some other $35 bourbons that we know?
Buffalo Trace. Jim Beam makes a couple of $35 bottles.
Well, let's go 35 or lower. What's some of those other ones?
Okay, so Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam, Kentucky Gentleman is like bottom of the line as you can get. That's like the well drinks at any bar that you go to. Makers obviously is in there. You got
so this is very good compared to some of those.
To some of the other ones, yes.
I mean, I would drink this neat. Like I said, I started this mixing it with Coke. Sometimes I'm watching football and I don't want a lot of bourbon, so I say that fake. I won't drink a lot of bourbon. I want it. I just don't drink it. So I drink with Coke, and I'll have a bourbon and Coke. And I do like the Makers. I've got 3 back here, Jim, Makers, and Buffalo Trace that I like to mix with Coke.
Very good mixers.
I'll rotate them all, and they all seem pretty similar in Coke.
That's why you don't mix the higher grades. That's why you get something like
they all
Kentucky
seem
Gentleman.
Pretty similar in Coke. Well, I think we like it.
This is a great choice for anyone wanting to get into bourbon. It's a fantastic. It even compares to some of the higher ones, in my opinion, as far as just all aroundness. But for the price tag, if you're wanting to get into bourbon and don't want to break the bank, I don't think that you can go wrong with Makers.
In some of these episodes, we're going to have to pull like a $15 bottle, a $25 bottle, $35 and a $45 bottle, just for affordable bourbon, and then a $100 bottle.
If you want to get a little bit more experimental.
You'll have to spend the night, though, when you do those.
Definitely. But that's basically it.
That's what our show's going to be about.
Go grab you some and try it for yourself. Let us know what you think in the comments of the YouTube video.
Check and make sure we don't have nobody.
We don't got no one yet, but we'll get there eventually.
Please subscribe.
It'll be posted. No. We are live on YouTube and Twitch, guys. The YouTube video will automatically be posted to the Bourbon Basement channel. All you have to do is type in The Bourbon Basement on YouTube, and you'll be able to go back and watch all of our archived live streams that we've done. They'll automatically be posted to the channel. But we're also live on Twitch. If you like Twitch as a platform better, we go live on both of them at the same time. So if you want to catch us on there, feel free to do that as well. Same name, The Bourbon Basement.
What time and when? We're going to try to do it on Fridays because we thought it's a good way to start the weekend.
We're going to do it on Fridays, roughly at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I don't know what that is for everyone else, but here in Kentucky, we're on Eastern Standard. So we're going to shoot for 6 p.m. It may be within 15 minutes or so, but it'll be around that time every Friday, minimum. And then we can make an announcement in that Friday stream if we decide that we're going to do 2 within the same week or not. But we definitely wanted to do 2 this week because, as we said before, there's been some technical difficulties and whatnot with trying to get everything going.
We don't even know if this is posting right now.
Oh, it's posted.
Nobody's commenting.
I'll make sure.
I'll
make sure. But this is basically what it's going to be, guys. It's just me and my dad kind of having a good time, trying some bourbon out, letting you all know what we think, and giving you all some good suggestions for different price ranges eventually, but we wanted to start out with one that anyone could go and afford, and then you could go from there. We'll get into, we got all kinds of them. We plan on getting through all of the Kentucky bourbons. We're not trying non-Kentucky bourbons on the show, but we're going to try to get through all of the Kentucky bourbons that we can afford.
That's thousands and thousands of episodes.
Yeah.
Watch daily.
Hey, you'll have something to look forward to every week, folks.
Hey, if you guys have any suggestions about what bourbon you'd like to try,
try to keep it within the Kentucky bourbons if you want it tried on the show. But if you have another bourbon that you just think that we ought to try and think that we're going to love, even if it's from out of state, we might not do a live cast on it, but we might try it amongst ourselves and mention it in a video and let you know what we thought about it.
Yeah. You won't catch me drinking many non-Kentucky bourbons.
Well, if you all see anything...
Do you know why? Because I'm loyal. We live in Bourbon County. We live in Kentucky. We're right here in the bourbon capital of the world. And it would be like cheating on my wife if I went to like a Tennessee whiskey or something like that.
Don't cheat on your wife. We don't condone.
And I never would. So any other bourbon other than Kentucky bourbon, he'll try and tell you what he thinks.
There you go.
I'm going to go, bleh.
Anyway, guys, if you see anything, if you can tell what's on this shelf back here and you have any suggestions on what you would like us to try next, we're eventually going to have a wheel that we spin, and we're going to put a select handful of bourbons on there, spin the wheel, and if we don't have any suggestions from our audience, then we're going to pick for the next week whatever that wheel is.
What are we going to do next week since we don't have the wheel?
I think that we should do what our first episode was going to be, which is our house bourbon, which is obviously Woodford Reserve. We've got a whole display over here for it. Very special to our hearts and very special to me especially.
It's the one that got me drinking bourbon neat.
It's a very, very good bourbon. But you'll have that to look forward to next week. That's going to be our episode for next week. Or no, Friday. That'll be Friday at 6 p.m. It'll be Woodford Reserve. But I think that's going to be it for us, guys. I think we've blabbed on long enough. Hopefully you all did go on to enjoy. If you did, be sure to drop a subscription on YouTube or follow us on Twitch. We are live on both right now, and you'll be able to find all the archive videos once again on our YouTube channel. Both of the channel names are The Bourbon Basement. You'll see our goofy little profile picture on there. Very easy to find. But all that being said, guys, thank you all for giving us a little bit of time out of your day. We really appreciate it. And always remember, guys, why drink alone?
And you can drink with us.
We'll catch y'all Friday.
Hey, can I have a hug?
No.
Then I'll settle for another warm Kentucky hug.